Hey everyone, welcome back to EasySpeakWorld with Maya and Ethan, your favorite place where you learn real English through real conversations. Okay, so I need to ask you something, and I want you to be completely honest with me. Have you ever spent like 20 minutes trying to decide what to reply to a text message? Like a simple message. Hey, are you free on Friday? And you just sit there staring at your phone, thinking about every possible way it could go wrong.
Huh. Okay. Yes. Guilty.
Right? And I'm not talking about some big important email to your boss or something serious. I'm talking about a 2-second reply to a friend, and somehow it takes longer to write than an entire essay.
Yeah, Maya, I completely know what you mean. It's like your brain just refuses to let you do the easy thing.
Exactly. And the worst part is, and this is what we're diving into today, the worst part is that while you're overthinking that text, you're also missing the moment, the actual life that's happening around you. And as always, I've got Ethan here with me, who I think, correct me if I'm wrong, is actually a professional overthinker.
I prefer deeply thoughtful, but sure, yeah.
See, even that answer was overthought.
It was a little bit, yeah.
Okay, before we go deeper into this, because we are going to get into this today. If this sounds like you, if you ever read a paragraph 3 times before sending it, if you rehearse conversations in your head before they happen, go ahead and hit that subscribe button because we talk about this kind of stuff all the time here. Real situations, real English, real feelings. And drop a comment below. Tell us, are you an overthinker or are you one of those rare magical people who just replies immediately without worrying? I genuinely want to know.
We want to know too, because sometimes I feel like it's everyone. Like overthinking is just the default setting now.
Oh, it absolutely is. Okay, so let's actually name this thing. Overthinking. What does that word even mean in everyday English?
Right, so overthinking is when you spend way too much mental energy on something. You analyze it, question it, replay it, more than is actually useful or necessary.
Way too much mental energy. I love that phrase because it's accurate. You're not just thinking, you're spending something. Energy, time, peace.
Exactly. And there's a related word, overanalyze. To overanalyze is to look too deeply at something to the point where it creates more confusion, not less.
Which is funny, right? Because we overthink because we want to make the right decision or say the right thing or avoid making a mistake. But actually, the overthinking itself becomes the mistake.
Yeah, it's like the tool that's supposed to help you ends up being the thing that's trapping you.
Okay, that's a really good sentence, actually. Say that again.
The tool that's supposed to help you ends up being the thing that's trapping you.
Yeah, write that one down, everyone, because that's it. That's the whole episode in one sentence, honestly.
Well, let's not end it there.
No, we're staying. But seriously, I think this is something that a lot of English learners feel specifically, right? Like even beyond regular overthinking, there's this extra layer. Is this word correct? Is my grammar perfect? Will they judge my accent? Did that sentence sound weird?
Oh, absolutely. And this is something we want to address directly today, because there's a big difference between thinking carefully and overthinking to the point of paralysis.
Paralysis. Okay, let's do a quick vocabulary note here. Paralysis. Normally it means when your body can't move, you're frozen physically. But in everyday English, we use it metaphorically. Analysis paralysis is a very common phrase. Do you want to explain that one, Ethan?
Yeah, so analysis paralysis is when you overanalyze a situation so much that you actually can't make a decision at all. You freeze, you do nothing. The thinking prevents the doing.
And I think most of us have felt this at some point. You've got so many options in front of you, maybe choosing a movie to watch or deciding what to eat or figuring out what to say in English. And instead of just picking something, your brain goes, but wait, what if this one's better? What if I regret this? What if I say it wrong?
And suddenly 15 minutes have passed and you've watched 0 movies, eaten nothing, and said nothing.
And now you're also a little hungry and slightly frustrated with yourself.
Yeah, exactly.
So we're going to talk about this in 3 parts today. First, why we overthink. Second, what it sounds like in English, because there are really interesting phrases for this. And third, and this is the part I'm most excited about, how to actually interrupt the cycle. How do you speak more freely? How do you stop editing yourself before you even begin?
And we'll also look at some everyday situations where this comes up, speaking in English, conversations, even just sending a voice note.
Stay with us on that last part because we're going to share some actual phrases you can use to sound more natural and less like you're reading from a textbook, coming up in a few minutes.
Right, but first, the why. Why do we overthink?
Okay, so here's what I think. I think overthinking comes from caring. Like, people who overthink are usually people who care a lot about getting things right, about not hurting people, about being understood. And that's actually a beautiful thing at its core.
That's a really generous way to look at it, actually.
I mean it though, but the problem is, and this is the cruel irony, when you care so much about the outcome, you start treating every small decision like it has huge consequences.
Right, like there's no such thing as a low-stakes moment anymore.
Exactly. And a phrase I love for this, making a mountain out of a molehill. Do you know this one?
Yes, so for listeners, a molehill is a tiny little mound of dirt, barely anything, and a mountain is, well, a mountain. Massive, overwhelming, impossible to ignore.
And when you make a mountain out of a molehill, you're taking something small and treating it like it's enormous. Oh no, I said thanks instead of thank you. They must think I'm rude. That's a molehill becoming a mountain.
Great example. And overthinking is basically a professional mountain-making service.
Yes, you just sit there building mountains all day out of absolutely nothing.
It's exhausting when you think about it.
Right? And here's another reason we overthink. And this one I feel like is really common with language learners specifically, the fear of judgment.
Oh, definitely. That's a big one.
The feeling that everyone is watching you, evaluating you, waiting for you to mess up. There's actually a term in psychology for this, the spotlight effect. The spotlight effect is when you believe that other people are paying more attention to you than they actually are.
So you feel like you're standing in a spotlight on a stage and the whole audience is watching every tiny mistake you make.
But actually, and this is the key, most people are too busy with their own spotlight to notice yours.
That's so true. Like after a conversation, I've spent time thinking, oh, did that thing I said sound weird? But the other person is completely moved on. They're thinking about their own life, their own dinner, their own awkward moment from 3 years ago.
Exactly. And honestly, that's kind of reassuring, isn't it? Like, relax, nobody's keeping score.
Yeah, which brings us to something really useful in spoken English, the idea of good enough.
Ooh, say more about that.
So, in everyday conversation, especially spoken English, good enough is actually the goal. Not perfect, not impressive, just clear, real, and human. A message that gets the point across, a sentence that is understood. That's success.
And I think English learners sometimes feel like there's a hidden bar, like somewhere out there is a perfect English and they need to reach it before they can speak freely. But that bar doesn't exist.
Right. Native speakers make grammatical errors constantly. They use informal language, they trail off, they change their mind mid-sentence.
They say and I mean and you know.
All the time.
All the time. In fact, those filler words, they actually make you sound more natural. Let's talk about that.
Yes, filler words. These are small words or sounds that speakers use while they're thinking. They're not meaningless. They actually do something in conversation.
So let's look at a few. And these signal that you're thinking. You're not done speaking yet. In fact, studies show that when people say listeners actually wait more patiently because it signals I have more to say, just give me a second.
It's like a verbal placeholder.
Exactly. Then there's I mean, which is used when you want to clarify something you just said or soften it a little. I was kind of annoyed. I mean, not angry, just tired.
And you know, which invites a listener to connect with you. It's almost like saying, you get what I mean, right? It builds a little bridge between you and the other person.
And then there's kind of and sort of. These are called hedging phrases. To hedge means to soften something, to make it less absolute. It was kind of confusing. I sort of understood. These make you sound less robotic and more natural.
So instead of saying, I do not understand this, you might say, I kind of lost track of what you were saying there. It's warmer. It's more human.
And here's the big one, actually. This little word does so much work in English. Actually, that's a good point. Actually, I changed my mind. Actually, I think I was wrong about that.
It can soften a correction.
introduce a surprise, or even build credibility. Actually, studies show that suddenly you sound authoritative.
Yeah, actually is doing a lot of heavy lifting in English conversations. Learn to use it naturally.
Okay, so let me ask you something, Maya. For you personally, when do you overthink the most?
Honestly, I overthink the most when I care about someone's opinion of me. Like if it's someone I really respect or a situation where I want to make a good impression, that's when the inner critic really shows up.
The inner critic.
Yes, that's the voice inside your head that second guesses everything you do. Was that too much? Was that not enough? Why did you say it like that? You should have said something different.
I know that voice.
Everyone does. And here's something interesting. Researchers call this self-monitoring. High self-monitors are people who constantly check how they're coming across to others. And up to a certain point, that's actually good. It helps you be thoughtful and socially aware.
But past a certain point,
It becomes a problem. It slows you down, it makes you anxious, and in language terms, it stops you from speaking at all.
because you're so worried about how it'll land that you never throw the ball.
Oh, I love that image. You never throw the ball.
Yeah, you're just standing there, ball in hand, planning the throw for so long that the game ends.
And everyone else on the field is like, are you going to throw that?
Exactly. And this is something we see a lot in English learners. You know the word, you understand the grammar, but in the moment, that critical, real-time moment, you freeze.
Yep. And by the time you've mentally approved the sentence, the conversation has moved on. The moment's gone. And then you feel worse.
So there's this cycle. Fear of making a mistake, overthink before speaking, miss the moment, feel bad, fear becomes stronger, overthink even more next time.
Ugh, I feel that cycle in my chest just hearing it described.
It's real. But here's the thing, it can be interrupted. And the interruption is usually not some big insight or dramatic change. It's usually something really small.
Like what?
Like just starting. Just saying the first word out loud, even if the sentence isn't finished in your head yet.
Oh, that's interesting. Say more.
So in spoken English, we often start sentences without knowing how they'll end. We figure it out as we go, and that's completely normal. You start with something like, well, what I'm trying to say is, or I think the point is, or basically, and then your brain catches up.
And these openers, they're not filler exactly. They're more like launch pads.
Exactly. Let's look at a few. The thing is, this is a great opener when you want to explain something or clarify something. The thing is, I didn't mean it that way.
What I mean is, similar, you're about to clarify. What I mean is, I wasn't trying to be rude.
To be honest, you're about to say something real, maybe something vulnerable. To be honest, I've been feeling a bit overwhelmed lately.
And then look, when you want to be direct, cut through the noise. Look, I think we need to talk about this.
These phrases do something really important. They buy you time. They signal to the listener, I'm thinking, I'm about to say something real, and the listener relaxes, they wait.
And you don't freeze because you've already started.
Right. The first word is the hardest. Once it's out, the rest comes.
You know, there's actually a concept in psychology called activation energy. It comes from chemistry originally. In chemistry, activation energy is the tiny push of energy you need to start a chemical reaction. Even if the reaction itself releases a lot of energy, you still need that little spark to begin.
And the same thing applies to speaking.
Exactly. Talking is the same. Just starting, just opening your mouth and saying the first sound. That's the activation energy. Once you start, the rest usually flows. It's the start that's hard.
And I think that's actually why people overthink so much, because starting feels final, like once you've said something, you can't take it back.
Which is true, but here's what we forget. We can also add to it. We can say, actually, let me rephrase that. We can say, wait, what I meant was, we can correct ourselves in real time and it's completely fine.
More than fine. It actually sounds very natural.
In fact, let's look at some great recovery phrases, because these are gold for English learners. Things you can say when you've said something and you want to fix it or clarify it.
Right. What I meant to say was, very natural. Sorry, let me rephrase that. Totally normal. Actually, I take that back. Casual, honest. Let me think about how to say this, self-aware and completely accept it.
And my favorite, does that make sense? At the end of something you've said, just adding, does that make sense? It invites the other person in. It tells them, I'm open to clarifying. I care about being understood more than sounding perfect.
And people respond really well to that. It's humble, it's human.
And it takes the pressure off you because now it's a conversation, not a performance.
This is the key shift, I think, from performance to conversation.
Oh, that's the episode right there. Performance versus conversation. When you're overthinking, you're in performance mode. You're rehearsing, you're on stage, you're trying to get applause.
But real connection, real communication happens in conversation mode, where you're responding in the moment, where it's okay to be imperfect, where the goal is understanding, not impression.
And look, I want to say this clearly. This doesn't just apply to English. This applies to people speaking in their first language, too. Lots of people overthink in their native language, but for language learners, there's an extra layer. And I think the most important thing we can say today is imperfect spoken English is infinitely better than perfect silence.
Yes, 1000%.
Infinitely better. A sentence that's a little awkward, a grammar point that's slightly off, those things don't break communication. Silence does.
And actually, a lot of people, when they hear someone speaking English with an accent or making small errors, they don't think this person is bad at English. They think this person is brave, they're trying, they're communicating with me.
Right. There's genuine admiration there because it takes courage to speak in a second language. It really does.
Absolutely.
Okay, I want to do something fun. Let's play a little game. I'm going to give a scenario, and we're going to talk about how an overthinker handles it versus how someone in conversation mode handles it.
Oh, I like this. Let's go.
Okay, scenario 1. You're in a coffee shop. The barista asks, "What size would you like?" And for some reason in that moment, you blank.
Okay, so the overthinker, they panic. They think, what's the right word? Is it medium or regular? What if I say the wrong thing? What if there is a name I don't know? What if...
And by then, there are 3 people behind them in line, all silently suffering.
Exactly. But the conversation mode person, they just say, medium, I think. Medium, yeah. And the barista goes, got it, and moves on. Done. Nobody cares.
Because the barista's heard 50 people say, medium today. You're not remarkable in your uncertainty. Everyone's uncertain.
Which is weirdly reassuring.
Right? Scenario 2. You're in a meeting, a work meeting in English, and someone asks for your opinion on something. And you have an opinion, but your inner critic says, what if it's wrong? What if you sound stupid?
The overthinker stays quiet, and then later someone else says almost exactly what they were thinking, and the overthinker thinks that was my idea and feels awful.
I have lived this moment.
Same. But the conversation mode person, they start with something like, I'm not sure, but I think maybe, or this might be a bit off, but what about? And just say the thing.
And the beautiful thing is, those openers, I'm not sure, but, this might be a bit off, but, those phrases are not weak. They're not admissions of failure. They're honest. And in meetings, honesty is respected.
Yeah. I think maybe is not the same as I don't know. I think maybe means I have an idea and I'm open to discussion. That's actually great meeting behavior.
Okay, last scenario. And this is the language learner special. You're in a conversation and someone uses a word you don't know. Do you pretend you understood or do you ask?
Overthinker says pretend, nod along, Google it later. Hope they don't ask follow-up questions.
And then what happens?
The conversation keeps going, and now they're lost, and more lost. And eventually they just sort of exit mentally.
And the conversation mode responds?
Sorry, I'm not sure I know that word. What does that mean? Simple, direct, completely normal.
And here's what happens when you do that. The other person feels good because you're engaged, you're listening, you cared enough to ask. It's flattering, actually, when someone asks you to explain something.
It says, I'm paying attention to what you're saying. That's a compliment. So ask, always ask. What does that mean? Could you explain that? Sorry, I didn't catch that. Could you repeat it? These are not signs of weakness. These are signs of someone who actually wants to communicate.
And fluency isn't knowing every word. Fluency is knowing how to navigate when you don't. That's the real skill.
Ooh, that's another one to write down. Fluency is not knowing every word. Fluency is knowing how to navigate when you don't.
And overthinking is, in a way, the opposite of navigation. Navigation is about moving forward, adapting, course correcting. Overthinking is standing at the map, afraid to take a step. Okay, we've been going deep, and I want to bring it back to something personal and simple because I think sometimes advice about overthinking can be really abstract. Just be present. Let go of perfectionism. Sure, very helpful, very practical.
Huh, super actionable. Thanks.
So let's get specific. What is one actual practical thing someone can do today, right now, to start interrupting the overthinking pattern, especially in English?
Okay, my honest answer, record yourself. Seriously, take your phone, press voice memo, and just talk about anything. Your day, a thing that happened, your opinion on something you watched, and don't edit, don't stop, just talk for 60 seconds.
And don't listen back to it right away.
Exactly. The point isn't to critique yourself. The point is to practice being in motion, speaking without the pause. You'll find that after about 20 seconds, the self-consciousness fades a little and you just talk.
I love that because it removes the audience. There's no one to judge you. It's just you and the recording and the words.
And you'll also notice that when you listen back later, that it's way better than you thought. Your inner critic always exaggerates how bad it was.
Always. My advice is simpler and kind of embarrassing to admit. When I find myself overthinking something I want to say, I say the first 3 words out loud, just the first 3.
Even if you don't know how the sentence ends?
And then what?
And then usually the sentence finishes itself. Because language is pattern. Once you start a thought, your brain knows how to finish it. The problem is we never let it start.
That's actually backed by linguistics research. Speech planning happens in real time, in chunks, not as a complete sentence fully formed in advance.
So when you're waiting for the complete sentence to appear in your head before you speak, you're waiting for something that doesn't even exist that way. Your brain doesn't work like that.
Right. Nobody has their whole sentence preloaded. They start and the words come. That's just how language works.
So trust the process. Trust your brain. Trust that once you open your mouth, something will come out, and it will probably be fine.
Probably fine is honestly the goal.
Honestly, probably fine is a great life philosophy. We should put that on a t-shirt.
EasySpeakWorld merch. Probably fine.
Okay, we're getting close to the end, and I want to take a moment for a real emotional beat here because I think this topic is actually kind of tender for a lot of people. Overthinking often comes from a place of really wanting to do well, wanting to connect, wanting to be understood. And that's not a flaw. That's love, in a way. Love for the person you're talking to, love for the language, love for communication.
Yeah, and I think if you're someone who overthinks, especially in a second language, the fact that you're here listening to this, trying to improve, that says everything about your intention. Your intention is good.
And good intention carries you really far in communication, further than perfect grammar, further than a huge vocabulary. A person who's trying, who's warm, who's present, even with mistakes, is understood. And more than understood, they're appreciated.
So give yourself permission to be in progress. You're not finished learning. You never will be, honestly. Nobody is.
None of us are. And actually, the best communicators I know, the ones that make you feel most heard, most at ease, they're not perfect speakers. They're just fully present. They're not in their head. They're right here with you in the conversation.
That's the real goal. Not perfect English, present English.
Present English. Yeah, that's the goal.
Okay, let's land this plane. Vocabulary recap. What did we cover today?
Overthink, overanalyze, analysis paralysis, make a mountain out of a molehill, the spotlight effect, hedging phrases, filler words, activation energy, self-monitoring.
And a bunch of practical phrases. I think maybe, what I mean is, does that make sense? I'm not sure, but could you explain that?
All of which make your English sound natural, warm, and human. Not robotic, not formal, real.
And the big takeaway is,
Stop waiting for the perfect sentence. Say the first 3 words. Let the rest follow. Use the launchpad phrases. Ask when you don't understand. And remember, your inner critic is a terrible judge of how well you're actually doing.
underrated takeaway, everyone else is too busy with their own spotlight to spend much time on yours.
That one's always going to be my favorite. Okay, before we go, your challenge this week. We want you to have one conversation, any conversation, in English, where you use at least one of the phrases from today. I think maybe, to be honest, does that make sense? What I mean is, any of them, just one, in a real conversation.
And then come back and tell us how it went. Seriously, we read comments. Drop it below.
And also, what's your overthinking tell? Like, what do you do when you're overthinking something? Do you go silent? Do you over-explain? Do you send 3 follow-up texts to clarify what you said? Tell us in the comments. We want to know.
Because you're not alone, not even a little bit.
Not at all. This is a very full house of overthinkers. We're all here together.
Thanks for spending this time with us.
It means a lot, really. We'll see you in the next one. Same place, same hosts, more real English. Take care of yourselves.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.